Robert has gone forward with Stewart to the right, Lineker and Howes to the left. Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Brilliant! That is schoolboy's own stuff. Oh, I bet even he can't believe it. Is there anything left from this man to surprise us? That was one of the finest free kicks that this stadium has ever seen.
Hello and welcome to episode 67 of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Well, Geoff, it's been a little while since we last did this podcast for various different reasons, so we've got a lot to talk about, but first, your trivia question.
Okay, it's a two-part question, and it concerns we're coming into the next round of the Big Cup, Champions League, I think it's called now. There are 16 teams left in Big Cup, 4 teams from Spain, 4 from Germany, 3 from England, 3 from Italy, PSG, and what's the 16th team? Now, second part of the question is, there are 3 teams from Italy. Who are they?
You'd think you'd know that one. You'd think it would come easy, but it just doesn't. All right, where shall we start? Because we've not done this for a while. There's been many manager rumblings and changes. Pochettino's gone to PSG. Frank Lampard's been sacked at Chelsea, and Tuchel from PSG has come in. Let's talk about that to start with, and then we'll move on to some of the incredible games that have gone by.
Yeah, I think regarding Chelsea, this started months and months ago, something that we talked about here when Petr Cech joined the coaching team, stroke management team, so he would be at training every single day. Now, he was very clearly Granovskaya's eyes in training, being, telling her what was going on. So there hasn't been enough wasn't enough progress by Lampard, and so they decided he had to go. Now, Chelsea have got rid of a lot of managers over the last few years, and they always make the decision at one point in time, and that point in time is when they do not believe that the manager can get them into the Champions League next season in the top 4. So they decided that at a point in time in December. Now, it's very strange that you can sack your manager one day and the next day you have appointed another manager. These are multi-million pound contracts. They take a while to sort out. So they had obviously been talking to Tuchel for a while. It transpired, though, that they offered the job to Pochettino the week before. In fact, before they'd actually pulled the trigger on Lampard, but said to him, look, we're not quite ready to fire him yet, give it a month. And he said, no, I won't wait a month. So he then went and joined PSG. Now, obviously, Tuchel is there, and Tuchel is the anointed son, the part of the school from Nagelsmann and all these Germans. Klopp is part of the German school. And they obviously want some sort of structure and plan. So they've made the investment, the 200-odd million in these attacking players, but they can't see anything coming from it. And it's not good enough to just say, okay, you're talented players, you go out and play. They want some structure there. Tuchel is a great coach for doing exactly that.
Yeah, a couple of points. First of all, yes, it takes ages to sort these contracts out. Like you said, it's talking a lot of money. You've got lawyers and agents on both sides, sending each other the documents, correcting them, sending them back. It takes ages. So obviously Lampard was out the door long before he knew about it. The other thing is interesting about Tuchel, apart from his reputation for falling out with the boards and directors and chairman of clubs, is Micah Richards, the former Man City player, wrote a column, I think it was for the BBC, who said, when I was at City, during that time, Chelsea changed managers a few times, and we'd hear the name, while we're in training, we'd hear the name of the new manager, and we'd go, uh-oh, they're going to be challenging us. He said, this time, they announced Tuchel, and I went, meh. And he said, I don't think he's a bad manager, and time will tell how he does, but I don't think he's the right fit for Chelsea, and I don't think he'll do very well. That's one person's opinion, but he felt that because of the way he puts players under pressure, there was a story of him after a loss at one of his clubs, possibly PSG, he got the players who'd made the mistakes crawl up and down on their hands and knees from one end of the football pitch to the other as punishment. I mean, that makes Jose look like a pussycat, doesn't it? There does seem to be a feeling that he's possibly not the right man for the job.
Well, is he the right man, as in him personally? Don't know. Do they need a manager who can impose some structure and control? Of course they do. You've got these expensive players that they bought, Guy Havertz and Werner specifically. Now, Lampard played both of them out of position every time he played them. Why is he playing Werner as essentially a left winger? Okay, he's doing the old Johan Cruyff, oh no, it's a starting position. But Timo Werner, you look at his goals, Timo Werner scores in the inside left channel, same as Aubameyang at Arsenal. This is what he's done throughout the whole of his career. Why are you suddenly changing it? Why do you think you know more than all these other managers that he had? And he's come through Leipzig, so he's been subject to Nagelsmann, and Tuchel is a disciple of Nagelsmann. And Havertz, where does Havertz play? In the inside right channel. So why are you playing him wide right and then wide left and then play him where he's used to play? Ziyech. I mean, I don't know if you remember that fantastic semi-final between Ajax and Tottenham in the Champions League a couple of years ago. Ziyech was just out of this world. He has a starting position wide-ish right. He's left-footed, so he likes to come in and play all his balls the way Messi does and build up for Barcelona. Basically, what they've said is we need somebody who knows how to put all these individual elements together and make a team and make them play. Silva coming in defence has kind of solved the defensive problems. But look at Marcos Alonso the other day, first match back. He looked like the player he was 3 years ago. But Lampard had decided, no, he's no good, he's off. And the goal he scored, it's amazing. They want some structure, they want a plan, they want to think that they've spent their money well and they're going to benefit from it. And if you want that, well, kind of anyone from Nagelsmann and Tuchel or any of the other Germans is perfect for you.
It'll be interesting to see Tuchel at Chelsea. Unfortunately for me as a Tottenham fan, we're playing Chelsea, well, tomorrow, Thursday this week. Again, like we played Liverpool after a bad run. You injure a mighty beast, it'll come back and bite you. And I think Chelsea now with a new manager are going to be tough to play. I'm not convinced with the Tuchel appointing, but I certainly wasn't impressed with Lampard being appointed in the first place. Interesting that I read a quote that Lampard made when Boas got sacked from Chelsea, and he said he was probably too young for the job. Said the young Frank Lampard, and it came far too soon for him in his career. He had a game plan and it just didn't work. Now, you could take that quote and apply it to Frank Lampard.
Very much so, and you know, long-time listeners can go back to the when he was appointed, and we said he shouldn't take the job. It's a year too early for him, minimum a year too early. And let's face it, the Chelsea job is going to become available in 18 months' time anyway, you know, because it always does. So why did he feel the need to do it? Why didn't he stay at Derby and say, no, I've got unfinished work here? He would have gone up in the eyes of everybody. Everyone thought, yeah, good for you. Was he scared that he couldn't get Derby promoted? If he got Derby promoted, he could, you know, basically he can double the number on the cheque that Chelsea offered him. But there was no need for him to take the job then. He didn't know enough, and it's one of the one of the issues that we see in management at the moment. What experience have they got to fall back on when things go wrong? It's like I don't know whether it was Joe Lewis who said it first. Everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face, and that's it. Where do you go? What do you fall back on? What experience have you got to dig yourself out of this hole? And he hadn't got any, and that's the problem. Solskjaer is in exactly the same situation. It's just that Manchester United spent 900 million in the last couple of years. Those players are worth 700 million now, by the way. But it's Manchester United just throw the money on the pitch and hope it all sorts itself out. In coaching terms, they have nowhere to go when things go wrong, which is why they didn't go through the Champions League and why they haven't. Well, they've won two knockout matches in the Champions League in the last 10 years. It's absolutely shambolic, and that's why they keep offering Ralph Rangnick the job to come along and be director of football, and then he would presumably bring in Nagelsmann and sort it all out. But Rangnick keeps saying no, so they're stuck with Solskjaer. But the issue is the manager needs the experience to fall back on. Lampard didn't have it.
Yeah, you've got to have that. We've said it before on the show, that thing where, well, this has gone wrong. That's similar to the situation I had 3 years ago at a different club. What did I do there? And of course he hasn't got that. It's an empty page. I mean, Lampard at Derby took them from 6th to 6th with 1 point less, but he did learn to use kids, the younger players. And then after he left, look at Derby now, battling relegation. Doing quite well under Wayne Rooney, though. I think of 5 or 6 games he's been in charge, they've lost once. They are doing a lot better, Wayne Rooney. If he was to leave after a year and take a big job, that again would be the wrong decision. I do feel Rooney will spend longer doing that, though, in the lower leagues. I think possibly he might have looked at Frank Lampard and learned a lesson there.
There is that. There is also Grandad that he can call up and get some advice from, and I think you can be fairly certain that Grandad has been giving him advice, and he'd do. I think Rooney will actually do very well, particularly if he stays there and if he doesn't get attracted to some fantastic opportunity somewhere else. Learn your trade, basically. You can't walk in on day one as a tiler and tile a wall properly, can you? You've actually got to learn how to do it, and that the great managers, they all started at the bottom somewhere, and they learned how to be football managers. And they learned what to do, and they brought that experience with them, which kind of leads us on to Sam Allardyce and and West Brom. I'm not sure even all of Sam's experience is going to help there. It's a basket case there.
No, just quickly before we talk about Sam, about Rooney, it's interesting you said he'd do well, because he gets a lot of stick and has got a lot during his playing career for not being the brightest or sharpest tool in the box and all that usual, the way the press like to vilify players and people in the know, but maybe he is a very good manager. Maybe he will grow into being a very sensible manager, and he has got Alex Ferguson to fall back on, and I believe they've signed 2 players on loan from Man United, so he's got a good relationship there. He's got to stick it out and not jump into his dream job like Lampard did.
Yeah, what you have to remember about the newspapers is they come up with a narrative, and a lot of the narrative about Rooney is all on the back of this comment that he looks like Shrek, ergo he's stupid, we don't know who's actually sat down and had a conversation with Wayne Rooney, apart from the Derby directors who hired him. It's entirely possible, probable even, he's actually much more intelligent than we think. He doesn't have O-levels and A-levels, etc., because he's been a footballer since he was 8 years old and always going to be a footballer. But it doesn't mean he's not intelligent, doesn't mean he doesn't understand football. And time will tell, won't it? And if you look at the managers before him, immediately before him at Derby, Koku, for example, obviously always going to be a manager, fantastically intelligent. And how did that work out then? We don't know what happens in training. We don't know what people say. We don't know, what the manager is doing, what his plan is, all this. All we see is what happens on the pitch and a win or a draw or loss. And then the newspapers, they write their reports based on the result. They don't write the report of the match and report the result afterwards. A narrow 2-1 loss, they were bad, when in fact they might have been brilliant, just didn't score. It's like Brighton this season. Brilliant. They've played fantastic football. They've been superb. They've been so well coached, so well managed, but they can't score. And that's why they're down where they are. So I'd be very happy to give Rooney lots of time, and I'll be fairly confident he'll turn out to be a good manager.
Yes, I'll agree with that, and I think he spent time as captain at Manchester United, then he spent time as player at Derby, then player assistant manager, and then when he got the chance to be interim manager, he said, right, that's it, I'm not playing anymore, because I can't do the job while I'm on the pitch, which I thought was a very sensible move, first of all. Secondly, that time and tenure as captain, and the fact that he's one of those footballers that may have a little bit of flair or a lot of flair, but he's a hard worker and a no-nonsense player, and I think he has the ability to empathise with the players because he's not that much older and has recently been playing, and also put his foot down and raise his voice.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. There's one more thing. The professional footballers, particularly in the Premier League, there's one rule which seems to apply, which is show us your medals. He wins there too, doesn't he?
He can certainly answer that question. All right, well, what you mentioned Sam Allardyce. He's never been relegated. People say, he keeps teams up. I think it's actually only 2 teams previously, or 3 maybe, that he's been called in to save from relegation. It's not like he's done it multiple times. It's just what he's remembered for, apart from his 100% England record. 1 game, 1 win. But I think he took that job at West Brom. That's a step too far. They are bad.
Yeah, I mean, we said at the very start of this season that they were nailed on for relegation, and nothing I've seen since has suggested anything different. If you can't score goals, you're going to go down. You could never see where the goals were going to come from at West Brom, and he still can't. He can, and he will, and he does organise the defence very well, but you've actually got to score, and I can't see where any goals are coming from at West Brom. I think they're doomed. The bottom 3, I think, are actually doomed, and Brighton will escape, and I'm very pleased about that. They just need to find themselves a goal scorer.
Sheffield United have now won 2 in a row, is it, or 2 in the last 3? Beat Man United, weird. One again against West Brom last night, which means that they won't go down with that terrible record at Derby of just 11 points. But they're probably still going to go down. Fulham are the other contender. Now, you and I, and you particularly, pointed out that when Fulham went up, Scott Parker looked terrified that he'd have to play with that team in the Premier League. However, since then, and since we last met, I've watched Fulham a few times. Once was against Tottenham when they got a very credible draw. Suddenly, Fulham look like a Premier League team and are playing some very attractive football, because he is a manager that learns from his mistakes and changed the system a little bit. And they suddenly look like they could survive if they hadn't had that terrible first half of a season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Parker has done extremely well. He's done his reputation no harm at all. In fact, I think he's enhanced his reputation. But they did have that start. They are, 7 points adrift. They're not going to make that up. And those bottom three are going down.
And then when they win a game, or Sheffield United win a game, the teams above them also win a game, so they're not catching them up. And Brighton, let's get on to it finally. Brighton finally won a game at home for the first time this season in a game that my team, Tottenham Hotspur, should have won. Now, it was a game without Harry Kane. We'd been without him for the second half against the champions Liverpool. Again, we lost. No shame in that. They are the champions. They had a bad run. They were bound to come back, and they did against Tottenham. But no excuse for Tottenham to lose at Brighton. It's the worst game I've seen them under Jose Mourinho, and it took me back to the last year of Pochettino's time at Tottenham. They looked in disarray. They didn't know what they were doing. They had Gareth Bale on the pitch from the start. I thought that's great. It looks to me, it might be just an emotional response, as if the other players don't want to include him in the game. It's like kids on a playground. They won't pass to him. He's like the unpopular kid. Or the new kid. We were looking like we were getting battered there because we weren't getting any attack going, and they were passing the ball back or sideways or away from Gareth Bale. All that talent gone to waste. He was then taken off, and Lamella was brought on, Winks was brought on. Lamella likes to cause chaos, but most of it doesn't actually result in anything. Possibly a yellow or red card, but it doesn't result in a lot. But he can be very unpredictable and do something. Winks back and forth, but never forward with his passes, and I just thought that was the worst I've seen Tottenham play. But it looked like the old Pochettino team towards the last 6 months of his reign, where it didn't look like they wanted to play for the manager, or they didn't know what they were doing. And it brings me back to your point about having a plan B. And there's a plan A when Harry Kane plays, and there's no plan B for Bale, or plan B at all when Harry Kane is out.
No, that's absolutely right, and it's the charge against Mourinho for the last 10 years that the reason he was fired at Real Madrid was the Real Madrid players would come back from Spanish duty and say, but these players in Barcelona, they do this and this and this in training, and Atletico, they do these moves in training. Why aren't we doing those? Mourinho's shtick is you sort the defence out, you sort out transition from attack to defence, but you just let the forwards get on with it. Now, if you've got Brazil's 1970 front five, you can do that, but Tottenham haven't got that. And when plan A isn't working, they have no plan B. They don't have the planned routines, the runs that players make, that City have and Liverpool have. All the young coaches have this, and they're doing it, and Mourinho isn't. So when it doesn't work, when lumping a long ball to Son doesn't work, what do we do? And, if anybody thinks Winks is the answer, then they need to go and get a fucking clue, because I cannot understand for the life of me what a player like him is doing playing for a team like Tottenham, whose ambition is top 4 European Super League when it happens, and you're playing with Winks in midfield. Get a grip, come on. If you want somebody to pass the ball backwards or square, Winks is your man. But he's not, even Højbjerg, who is Højbjerg the best buy this season? I think it's a good shout that he is. Fantastic holding midfield player. But look at the forward passes he makes. He creates quite a lot. And he always has done throughout his career. And if he hadn't had all those terrible injuries, people would be talking about him being world class. But Winks, get a grip. I mean, he's shockingly bad. What was he doing on the pitch? It is something that does happen at clubs that they take against one player. And they clearly have with Bale. And England used to find it where the Man United contingent admitted that they wouldn't pass to a Liverpool player for England. And this is what was happening. Bale was making runs, he made space, didn't receive the ball. So something's not quite right. We don't see what happens in training, so we don't know. But something has happened there. And why a player like Winks, who has been a professional footballer for a day and a half, doesn't pass to a world-class player like Bale. I cannot understand that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was very disappointed in Harry Winks again. Thankfully, in a way, he's kind of fallen out of favour with Jose. It's taken a while. I just want to say a couple of things, though, in defence of what happened. First of all, it's not that long since Tottenham were top of the league, and all the Tottenham fans were saying, this is it. Now they're saying, get rid of Jose. You've got 11 players on the pitch, all professional players, highly paid, many of them internationals. They still know how to play, they still know how to win, no matter which one of the squad is out or in. If they're passing the ball back constantly like that, I am convinced you're 1-0 down against Brighton with all those internationals Arsenal's, I am convinced that with 20 minutes to go, Jose Mourinho did not say to them, when you get as far as the halfway line, pass the ball back to the goalkeeper. I am not convinced that Jose Mourinho is to blame for that. They were timid, Tottenham, utterly abject and timid, and I blame the players for that performance because he put on the strongest team he thought he had. We don't know what happens in training during the week. He put on the strongest team he thought he had, and those players are paid to go out there and perform, and they did not perform for the club or the manager, and I blame the players for that performance. However, we got a backup striker with Vinicius to back up for Kane, but he wasn't on the pitch to begin with in the game. Maybe that was something we don't know about, but it seems strange. But I don't think you can blame the manager or for not having a plan B particularly, because the players were there to do a job, and they looked lazy and tired.
Yeah, I agree with that. There are two things that I think are particularly relevant. Brighton didn't have Harry Kane either, and secondly, with 10 minutes to go and you're a goal down, you expect the team to bomb forwards to put pressure on it. None of that happened. And the Brighton manager said he was really surprised that this didn't happen in the match. You know, what's happening? There is something going on there.
Yes, possibly there is something going on, but before we move on, just one more point, sort of balance yours. Like I said, it's not that long ago since we were top of the table. We're only a few points behind. We've lost 2 games in a row. Suddenly, there's a massive crisis. If we win out, well, we probably won't win against Chelsea, but it's the draws that have been the problem, not the losses. I mean, 3 losses in 20 games or something. It's not bad. Better than any Pochettino. So, you know, it's not terrible. It's 2 games, 1 against the champions and 1 maybe an off day. If it continues for the next 3 or 4 games, then yes, there is a crisis. Which moves me to the next point. We talked about Lampard getting sacked because Chelsea had a little bit of a wobble. Arsenal have had a wobble nearly all season. They had a little bit of a run of wins, and then they lost again yesterday against Wolves, who have been dreadful lately. Very bad. They lost to a weak Wolves team who've sold their best player and had 2 men sent off. They've had 9 players sent off, or 9 red cards since Arteta took over. The next team in the Premier League is 3 red cards in that period. 3 times as many red cards. 2 yesterday. Lost to Wolves. And yet nobody's screaming for his head. We've lost 2 games in a row, 1 to the champions and 1 on an off day to Brighton, and everybody's saying Jose out, and yet Arteta's just rumbling on and probably bumbling on.
Yeah, I mean we've been saying this since the start of the season that, you know, again, the narrative from the journalists is Arteta is fantastic. You know, there's no evidence to support that at all because he's never managed anybody. So you know, on what basis did they make that claim? But they can't go back on the narrative, so it has to be Arteta was brilliant. If they lost, it was a bad refereeing decision, or the players, or something, or this, or that, or, you know, whatever. If you've got 9 players sent off, which is 3 times as many as the next thing, it shows you there's something wrong in that team. The players don't believe in whatever scheme that the manager is talking about. You know, they clearly don't have the process to fall back on. They don't have that discipline of, okay, this is my position, this is what I must do. My base case, if you like, is I do this. As soon as things don't go right, they're losing their tempers and it's all starting to go wobbly, and you end up with 9 red cards. And all of that comes back to the manager. He has no experience to fall back on. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's quite clear when you look at it. He is completely and totally out of his depth. And you look at those the points that they made and ask yourself, who were they against? Who did they get these points from? And it's only when you've gone through halfway through the season where everyone has played everyone else that you start to see what's actually going on. And I'll be amazed if Arsenal finish as high as 8th.
Yeah, I mean, after yesterday's loss, they're 10th, I think. They drew against Man United in the game before at Arsenal. Man United have been beaten by worse teams this season. But now they're down to 10th, Arsenal, and 9 red cards in that time that he's been in charge compared to Man United. I think it is 3. I mean, it's a dreadful disciplinary record, and that's down, as you say, to the manager.
Yeah, I haven't got the exact stat with me, but I read it a couple of days ago. Arteta's results against the self-styled top 6, not the people who are currently top 6 in the title, but the self-styled top 6 who would all join this European breakaway league. He's only won 2 matches against them. You know, so where's he got his points? He's got his points from middle to bottom of the table teams. Well, okay, fair enough. You know, your squad's worth 550 million nominally. You know, worth is a strange concept, but that's where it's sitting at the moment. So are you going to beat teams that have got a squad valued at 150 million? Well, you should. That's all that's happened at the Wanderers. It's not, you know, the groundsman is the groundsman. He's just not up to it.
No, he's not up to it. And just to put it into context, Wolves beat Arsenal yesterday. Yes, Arsenal were down to 10 men. That is Wolves' first league victory since they beat surprisingly, Chelsea on the 15th of December. There have been a lot of league games since then. The only games they've won is in the FA Cup against Palace and Chorley. Those are the only times Wolves have won since the middle of December. And they beat Arsenal. Down to 9 men, I understand. The other game that was down to 9 men was poor old Southampton. They had 2 red cards in their game at Manchester United. They've now lost in the last season and this season, 9-0 at home to Leicester and 9-0 away at Man United. That's the only time that's ever happened, and only the third time there's been a 9-0 victory, 2 of them by Man United. Hasenhüttl, the manager, said, we did it last time, we'll do it again, we'll pick ourselves up. If you're down to 9 men, you're going to lose 3-0, 4-0, 6-0, 9-0. By that point, it doesn't make any difference.
No, and you know, a 9-0 just says it was a perfect storm. You know, every shot goes in, and as an attacking team, we can't do anything wrong. You know, the only thing Hasenhüttl could do is shrug, say, okay, we start work again tomorrow, and you know, we did it before, we'll do it again. He'll come back from that. Of course he will. He's a very good manager. And, you know, rather than giving the players a bollocking, the best thing he could do is give them a day off. To say, look, you know, this was crap. You know, this wasn't us. Just go away and think about something else, and we'll come back to training on Tuesday and see what happens. So I don't think 9-0 matters at all. It's just one of those things where every shot goes in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Man United started that 9-0 record by beating Ipswich in 95, then Leicester, and then have done it again. It's a record. It happens. It's a blip because Southampton have had a good season. They have gone down a little bit lately, but they'll bounce back, definitely. Man United, do they flatter, do they deceive? I think the title race is between Liverpool and Man City, and probably City might edge it, but we'll come to that in the shows as we go along. But now I want to turn to your team, West Ham United, who, maybe jokingly or slightly tongue-in-cheek, our fellow pundit on the radio, on our Saturday sports show on 93.6 Global Radio here on the Costa del Sol, our fellow pundit Kirk Blows, who is also a West Ham fan like yourself, insisted that we, on Saturday, before you lost on Sunday, insisted on talking about West Ham's title challenge. They are much improved, though, and playing some nice football under David Moyes, who you don't really trust.
Title challenge. Kirk's having a laugh there, which I think he knows very well. No, there's no title challenge, and West Ham will finish somewhere between 8th and 6th. So 6th, 7th or 8th is where we'll finish, where we should finish when you look at the strength of the squad compared to the rest of the Premier League. We could go higher if the teams that should be above carry on as they have been, because nobody's been terribly consistent this season. It's one of these ones where people keep trying to throw it away. Moyes has set West Ham to do what Moyes does. Let's be really, really difficult to beat, and you know, always have that extra defensive midfielder apart from in place of an attacking midfielder, and that's where I disagree with Moyes. I'd always have Lanzini on the pitch instead of the defensive player, because Lanzini will create something magical, and that's the West Ham way. It's what we do. But you have to say, Moyes is doing what Moyes does. He had a great record at Everton. You know, he won the Everton Cup every season. You know, so setting West Ham to finish 7th and win the Everton Cup is kind of par for the course for him. He's done a very good job. Not the job I want to see a West Ham manager do, but it is a good job. They are sitting 5th, and I think after 21 games, I think we could probably draw a line under it and say, you know, we understand what the league is. We should sort of stop it now. Manchester United sit up there. I still think they'll finish 5th, and I think Chelsea will get into the top 4, and Leicester as well. So the teams that are flattering to deceive are the Wanderers when they play against somebody poor, and Manchester United. So I do think Manchester United will still finish 5th, and we'll see. Will City beat Liverpool? Yes, I think they will. City, Liverpool, Leicester, Chelsea will be the top 4.
All right, well, something else Kirk said to me yesterday was that, all right, there was no title challenge. Of course, it was a joke, as you said. But they are doing a much better than last season. I think before yesterday's game, or before the game before that, you had 35 points, which is 4 less than you had for the entirety of last season. That's incredible. What he did say was, time will tell, but you didn't buy anybody in the transfer window. You haven't replaced Haller, your record signing, who you sold for half price after a year to Ajax, and you didn't replace him. He said maybe the board were thinking, last year we avoided relegation, we were caught in a relegation battle. We've avoided that this season. We've pulled ourselves away from that. Let's consolidate and be happy that we're not going to get relegated. We don't need to buy a striker. It's a waste of money. That's fine, he said, but if we finish 7th after this push into the top 5 that we've had recently, if we just miss out by a point or two on a possible European spot, then regret is going to set in. So if you finish 9th or 10th, then job done without spending money that you didn't need to spend. If you finish 7th and just miss out, then possibly you should have got a new striker.
Okay, I think they've been trying to get a striker, but the mid-season transfer window is a very bad time to buy, particularly strikers. You always end up paying far too much, and there's always the question, well, why does the current team want to sell him? I understand not being able to buy a striker. The very bad news, and I think it is terrible news, is taking Lingard on loan, because I think that's going to disrupt the dressing room. He's teacher's pet, and I cannot see what he what does he offer. You've got Fornals and Lanzini, who are likely are much better players than him. It got rid of Snodgrass the week before. Snodgrass is a better player than Lingard. Why get rid of Snodgrass and bring in Lingard, for God's sake? I'm absolutely convinced this will backfire on them, because teacher's pet, we've got him on loan, we've got to play him, and what does Lingard offer any team at all? It's just, to me, it's a terrible decision. And if he gets game time ahead of Fornals and Lanzini, then I think the dressing room is going to turn very, very quickly, because those two players are special. Lingard isn't special. Lingard is a run-of-the-mill Premier League player. He's a Dele Alli light. He is. Well, you ask yourself, what does Lingard do? Tell me about great games Lingard has had. I can't think of a single one, and I don't think anyone else could either. I think that's going to cost West Ham points. The other thing about West Ham's position in 5th is, there is a very old saying in football, West Ham's title challenge comes down with the Christmas decorations. West Ham always have a great half season, either the first half of the season or the second half. Keeping it going for the whole season has always been the problem. Particularly with bringing Lingard in, it could turn out to be a problem this season as well.
We had this discussion on the radio show, and we said what a shame that Geoff isn't here, because we discussed Lingard's signing for West Ham, and Kirk, your fellow West Ham fan, said he thought it was a good signing because it was a loan, and he reckoned you'd get a few goals out of Lingard. So it was a shame you weren't there, but so two different opinions there. Before we predict Saturday's and weekend's coming games, another topic of conversation was the bizarre, quite dramatic resignation, or attempted resignation, by Andre Villas-Boas during his press conference. Was it yesterday? Who said that basically he said, I am resigning, I tender my resignation. We sent out a player on loan that I found out about when I woke up and read the papers, and we've signed a player that I didn't want, and without the board have gone against my wishes. I tender my resignation. I don't want any money. I want to make that clear. Where's the words? I just want to leave. A few days before, there'd been near riots at the training camp from disgruntled Marseille supporters because they've been on a bit of a bad run. Cynics among the press are saying he just wants to get out of there with his head held high and he's found an excuse. But there's been some developments, haven't there?
There have, yeah. You need to understand a bit about French law, particularly employment law. French employees are incredibly well protected, what we're used to in the UK. And one thing is, it doesn't matter what Villas-Boas says about, I don't want to leave with money, etc., etc. He actually doesn't have any choice in that. It's the law. If he resigns, then certain things have to happen legally, and he cannot give up his rights to any compensation that he would be due. And under French law, he'd be due a lot. So he's being a bit disingenuous there with what he's saying. And Marseille said, no, we don't accept your resignation, we're going to sack you. Now, the reason that they would do that is that it puts them in a better position regarding this employment law, because now what they're saying to Villas-Boas is, if you want anything, you've got to take us to court. In the normal course of events, the employee takes the company to court and the employee wins. It's like Villas-Boas has thrown down the gauntlet and they've picked it up and said, oh, no, it's going to go this way. If you actually believe what you're saying, take us to court and prove it. So will he do that? And that's the question. Now, regarding this other player who they bought, I mean, come on, be serious. He's been a coach in Europe for a long time, and I mean, he's even been in Russia, for God's sake, out in St. Petersburg, hasn't he? He knows perfectly well that the way that European clubs are managed is the sporting director brings in, his 25, 28 players. They're handed over to the head coach and said, well, you sort that lot out. That's the way it goes. This bringing in this player that he didn't want is nothing new. It happens to every single coach in every club in Europe every year. If he really, really didn't rate this player between now and the end of the season, why didn't he just not play him? It's an excuse. You put all that together, and what's it telling you? It's telling you that behind the scenes there's something very seriously wrong. And I think that is going to come out in time.
Yeah, I mean, this player is called Oliver Ncham from Celtic, so obviously not that good, with all due respect. He says, does Villas-Boas, he told them that he didn't want to bring in the midfielder, Oliver Ncham. He said he told the club who he wanted, and it wasn't him, after Morgan Sanson had gone to Villa. He also said that the departure of Radonic to Hertha Berlin, he had no idea about either. He learned both those things in the press. And you said, well, all right, then, you don't want Ncham, then just bench him for the season, and that, by way of protest, is great. But you're one player down then, aren't you? So you want to be able to have a player that you can play. You're restricting your choices. But maybe there is something in the background. But that now means that Villas-Boas is available. Look out, Arteta!
I would love it if Villas-Boas went to the Wanderers. Oh, that would be like Christmas every week, wouldn't it? It would be fantastic. I mean, Villas-Boas, he was supposed to be the anointed son of Mourinho, coming out of the same team, being brilliant and young, etc., etc. But he showed at Chelsea that he's not. You know, he proved at Chelsea he's just not up to it. And he's got each appointment he's had since then has been a little one more step down the rung. Yeah, he was at St. Petersburg and at Tottenham as well, if you remember. How well did that go, do you think? No, I would love him to go to the Wanderers. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he came from Chelsea to Tottenham. What Chelsea were doing appointing him, I don't know. I mean, as Frank Lampard said at the time, far too young. By the way, he is, I think, 6 months older than Frank Lampard, so still a young man. And then he went to Tottenham, as I say, well, I mean, it's always a disaster at Tottenham. It has been since about 1961, I think. So it really doesn't matter. But it did not go well for him at Tottenham. Then he went to St. Petersburg or wherever, and then obviously to Marseille. That's about the level. I don't think, if Jose got sacked or Arteta got sacked, I don't think either club would bring in Villas-Boas. But it would be fun to see him at Arsenal. I would love that. That would be hilarious. But long may Arteta continue. Long may they keep getting players sent off and losing games to non-title contenders like Wolves. Let's have a look what's happening this coming weekend then. Our fixtures for Saturday and our predictions. Well, here we are. Arsenal are away at Aston Villa. I mean, they've got Jack Grealish, who is just absolutely incredible. And they do sometimes pull some great results out of the bag, Aston Villa. What do you rate to that one?
I think 2-1 to Villa.
Well, I'm afraid I think Arsenal will win that one. Burnley against Brighton. Again, Burnley, like Sheffield United, have started to play a little bit better. But then Brighton looked very, very sharp and fresh and crisp against Tottenham. That could be a draw for me.
I think Burnley will win by 2 clear goals. I mean, Sean Dyche has got Burnley playing as Burnley play. They had a very, very bad start to the season, but I never had any doubt that he'd get them out of it, and that they'll finish upper to mid-table at the end of the season. They'll win by 2 clear goals against Brighton.
All right. Just going back to that Villa and Arsenal game, I just realised Arsenal will be without 2 players because they got those 2 red cards, one of them being Leno, the goalkeeper. So Villa might fancy that. Then we got Newcastle United against Southampton. Steve Bruce under a lot of pressure from the fans, but then suddenly changes his tactics completely and starts playing this so-called attacking style of football. Wins a cup, beat Everton, won another game, but lost again. But Southampton without a couple of players. That could be an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a Southampton win. It's the bounce back. They're going to win 2-0 away. Yeah,
I think Hasenhüttl there at Southampton, the board stuck by him, and I think the players stick by him, and I think the players know, and the fans know, that 9-0 at Man United was not his fault. It was just one of those things, 2 players sent off, and I think they'll bounce back, I agree. Then we've got Fulham, who I think have started to play good football, against erstwhile top 4 contenders, West Ham United. It could be a tough game for you lot.
I think it will be a tough game. It's exactly the sort of opponent that Fulham need. I can see them winning that 2-1.
Maybe Lingard will score and you'll win the game. Then Manchester United against Everton. Well, Everton have been so inconsistent after that great start. They've got a very, very good manager, but Man United they'll be absolutely buoyed by that victory against Southampton and within a point of the leaders in the league. So I think that's 2-1 or 3-1 to United.
No, I can't see Everton scoring 2-0 Man United.
All right, then Sunday we got, if Tottenham don't win this game, at home to West Bromwich Albion, then I will agree with people in the press saying there is a crisis at Tottenham. Tottenham against West Bromwich Albion. Again, Tottenham have this habit, over the years I've noticed, of losing to teams who have had a very bad run, and then, because every team has a bounce back. You don't lose forever and ever and ever. There's a cycle, and you have a bad run, and then suddenly you bounce back, and it can be against the top teams. We had it with Brighton, we had it with Liverpool. I'm just hoping it won't be against West Brom 2-0 Tottenham, I'm saying.
I think that might be 1-1. Yeah, I can't see where goals are coming from at Tottenham, but they should be too strong for West Brom. West Brom has struggled to score goals all season, but I think that could be 1-1.
I see it as a similar game to the Brighton game, in the sense that Tottenham, if they play like they did against Brighton and keep passing the ball backwards and sideways and don't move it forward, free-flowing way of moving it forward, they won't break West Brom down, they'll be going to London to defend. And that's all they will do. They won't be looking to win that game. They'll be camped in their own half, and Tottenham might not be able to break them down, but I still think we'll win it. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Leicester.
2-1 to Leicester.
Leicester are going to be far too strong for Wolves, who are having a bit of a rough season. Liverpool against Manchester City. Well, that's what they call a veritable six-pointer.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? 2-1 to City.
It very well could be. I mean, as a Tottenham fan and, hopefully a top four contender, possibly not a title contender, the only result that would please me would be a 0-0 draw, I think. Sheffield United against Chelsea. Well, he's got his win, didn't he, Tuchel? He's got a draw and a win under his belt. This will be his third game. I think now his style and everything, his tactics will start to show.
Yeah, but it's very, very tough, I think, to go against Chris Wilder. Chris Wilder has been a brilliant manager. He sets that team up. They're very, very good. Not just incredibly difficult to beat, but their transition from defence to attack is brilliant. And it's starting to work. But the first thing that came into my head was 2-1 to Chelsea, so I'm going to stick with that.
All right, and then finally, next Monday, Leeds United against Crystal Palace. With Leeds United, you never know what you're going to get. Could be absolutely anything.
Yeah, they can win 5-0, lose 5-0, pick any numbers in between, to be quite honest. They should be too good for Palace. So 2-0 Leeds.
And I'm going to go for, I think Palace will score. They've started to score goals finally. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Leeds. Although I do fear that might be if it's going to be a draw, it's going to be a high scoring one, which is something Palace don't do. So probably Leeds will have to win it. That's all we've got time for. But before we say our goodbyes, it is time for the intriguing and what I found quite difficult trivia question.
Okay, the question was that we've got the final 16 in the Big Cup coming up. We have 4 teams from Spain, 4 from Germany, 3 from England, 3 from Italy, PSG and someone else. Who is the someone else? And that team is Porto. Porto are actually the only team to have won Big Cup in the last 25 years that didn't come from Spain, Germany, England or Italy. So if anyone's talking about there being a European Super League, kick Porto out, replace them with Man United, and we've got it already in that final 16. We already have it, let's be honest about it. But the second part of the question was 3 teams from Italy. Who are they? They are, and it surprised me. I had to look it up as I hadn't guessed at all. The 3 from Italy are Juventus, which I think most people would get, Lazio and Atalanta.
Amazing, yeah. Lazio and Atalanta would not have come to my mind immediately. That's all we've got time for. We'll be back next week with more Hitting the Bar. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.